Becoming more and more prevalent among organizational cultures today is an increased emphasis on making sure that curiosity is not killed by the cat. In fact, it's becoming an embraced pillar of thriving organizational cultures today. According to Wealth Professional, Canada Magazine, which is Canada's leading independent publication, which is dedicated to financial planners and advice professionals, they report that 82% of business leaders, not limited to just CEOs, believe that adopting a culture of curiosity is important for their organization to grow in a post-COVID environment. However, only approximately 44% of today's CEOs in Canada believe that their organization has adopted a curious culture. Meanwhile, the publication also reports strategic adaptability is also important, with 56% of Canadian CEOs believing their companies have begun competing in a variety of different sectors in the last 5 years, which suggests a proactive and questioning approach to market changes in order for their organizations to grow and prosper. This is all interesting food for thought for my friend Tyler Chisholm to consider. He's a seasoned entrepreneur, podcast host, and author who believes that curiosity is the ultimate leadership superpower. As the author of the new book, Curious as Hell, Leading and Growing with Curiosity, Tyler helps leaders, founders, and change makers unlock growth and resilience by asking better questions. He is also the CEO and co-founder of Clearmotive Marketing Group, which he grew from a 2-person startup to a national firm, and he joined me this week to talk about the linkage between leadership and curiosity and why it should be an organizational pillar required for every organization to advance forward. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you about leadership and curiosity, my friend. It's great to see you, and happy Monday to you, my friend.
Awesome, man. Good to be here. Let's go. Rock and roll.
Absolutely. So, Tyler, I know that you're someone that believes that curiosity is something that every leader needs to have when we're building a thriving organizational culture, my friend, and I'm wondering why you hold that belief, my friend.
This was hard learned, Kevin. I spent my earlier career as a leader thinking I had to have all the answers, thinking I was supposed to be the man on the mountain. And very quickly, I started realizing, actually through podcasting, that when I'm curious, not only do I create better connections, I create better relationships, I actually end up leaving with more than when I started. So I started slowly taking the practice of being a curious leader into my day-to-day life from what I learned from being a podcast host. And all of a sudden, I noticed very quickly, My team started to be more open. They started to come showing up with bigger and better ideas. They were less fearful to engage. I created more space in the room. I started to talk to other leaders about this. So it's been the last 5 years for me of where I really landed on the concept of curiosity, which means so much more than just asking questions, was a game changer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I'm curious to get your thoughts on how the role of inclusion has evolved in organizational culture, particularly for people with disabilities, and the idea of better infusing them in organizational culture and the competitive advantage that can offer organizations. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Kevin, that's an excellent question. I think it stems from so many aspects, but the one that I land on so firmly is the diversity and value of different perspectives. If you were going to bring anyone into your organization, let's face it, we're in a world today where we're being inundated with new technologies and fast moving and things that are every industry, no matter where you are, you're being disrupted in some way. These same perspectives that you've brought to the table are not going to get you different outcomes. They're going to get you the same outcomes in a world that's changed. If I'm not surrounding myself with people that see and engage and experience in the world differently, and more importantly, I'm willing to engage them. I'm willing to bring them in for their expertise, which is sometimes just a different perspective. I'm leaving myself open to blind spots. So I think the role and the need for including people in your organization that show up at the table living a very different perspective than you do, for whatever reason, I think it's critical. And I think it's actually a make or break as an organizational leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, you may not know this, but January is National Mentoring Month, my friend. And I'm wondering your thoughts on the importance of celebrating mentors as leaders as organizations. And what are your beliefs on the importance of mentorship and leadership and leaders in organizations, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
I didn't know, Kevin, that this was mentorship month. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to repeat that later today. I think to be a leader is to be a coach, and to be a coach is to be a mentor. It's to believe in somebody in a way that they don't necessarily see that same belief in themselves. When
Mm-hmm.
I start showing up for my team to help make them the best version of them, not a version of me or not a version of other people on the team, but I truly take the time to take the experiences and the life lessons I've learned, often the hard way, and sharing those life lessons with individuals on my team, no matter what their level of seniority or experience, and act truly as a coach, being there to help them find what's the best next path for them by taking the time to be relationally curious and actually learning about those individuals. And I don't mean empathy for the sake of empathy. I mean empathy from a tactical perspective. We work in professional settings. We are there, we're goal oriented, we're performance oriented. If I'm not helping every person on my team, whether I report to them or report to me, be the best version of them, which is what I see exactly as a mentor slash coach, I think I'm just leaving money on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I know that you're someone who believes that leaders shouldn't have all of the answers. And you know, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you. And you say that they shouldn't be expected to, because both leaders and employees don't want that, my friend. And I'm someone who believes that you have to invest in your people and give them sort of the autonomy to make decisions, because then they're more invested in the outcome of the entire organization, my friend. And I wonder your thoughts on why you believe that leaders shouldn't have all the answers, my friend.
Well, for starters, I think it's an unrealistic expectation in this rapidly changing world that we all know about. It's cliche to even bring it up. The expectation or the idea that myself as a single individual will have all perspectives, all information required to be able to solve a problem, for one, I think is unrealistic, which leads to simply just burnout and potentially bad decision making. I think number two, how ridiculous would it be for me as a leader of a team, even a mid level manager at any level in the organization, to hire people for their skills, their talent, and their background and not tap into that and take full advantage of their perspectives? I hired an individual who has a different life path than me, who comes with a different background, different education, and different expertise. And then I'm going to be expected to tell them everything they should do in their role. It actually sounds ridiculous from a pure business investment to return when you say it out loud. And I think that when you engage with the team, and I've got members of my team that are 20 years old, and I have members that are 55 years old. And I would say, even more so for the younger generation, there's an expectation that they want their voice heard. They want a seat at that table. And there's an old myth that, oh, you have to earn it and you have to pay your dues. I would argue that yes, there's some truth there because experience and wisdom in business does provide value, but so does that raw, unfiltered perspective of like, huh, I've never looked at it that way because this individual doesn't have the filters and the biases that you have. But if you think you have all the answers, you're not leaving space to take advantage of that. And I think you're absolutely leaving uncapitalized opportunity on the table if you think solely that you need to have all the answers. It's just not realistic. And I don't think it's healthy for the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I'm curious to ask you about how do you think we can make sure that leaders aren't so robotic during staff meetings and always sort of checking off a list? Because I've been in staff meetings where the leader of the team has this sort of agenda that they're trying to get through during staff meetings and not stopping to take a breath to really understand what the pain points of the organization are from different points of view and always trying to be sort of this robotic answer to everything. So I'm curious, how do we get more CEOs to be better listeners and less robotic, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
That's such a powerful question, and I love the way you asked it. The robotic leader who's following a checklist, and I think we all immediately have someone pop into our mind when I hear you say that. But I think it starts with kind of the three tiers of curiosity. The first one being self curiosity. Why as a leader, you have to wake up every day and ask yourself, how do I want to show up? Do I want to show up in a way that creates space for my team in the room? Do I want to show up reacting versus reflecting? Do I want to show up making my team feel unsafe to contribute, to chip in? Do I believe that when I show up in that meeting, I've got to run it and I've got to have a perfect agenda or it wasn't successful? These are all levels of self curiosity that I think will resonate differently for people. And I think the first thing you need to start doing is in a meeting like that, say you are that leader. Say you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, oh, maybe I do that. There's a little bit of reflection. Start asking yourself, do you think it's getting you the best outcome? Or is it just checking the box, which is have a meeting? And if you can't look back at that meeting and go, wow, did I get a fresh perspective? Did my team feel comfortable jumping in? Did I leave with a new idea that I didn't show up with? If those things aren't happening, you've got to really take a moment with yourself and say, what if I showed up a little bit more vulnerable? What if I walked in and said, hey guys, I actually don't know the answer today. I want to come up with a shared outcome. Let's try. What would it be like if we tried something we've never tried before? Let's come up with the craziest ideas. What would it be like if the opposite was true? What would it be like if the other thing was true? Sometimes creating a little bit of those scenarios and almost making it playful increases the safety for your team, allows you as the leader to go, huh, wait a second. I didn't show up with an agenda. I didn't show up having all the answers, and I actually got a better outcome. But I think sometimes you have to create a kind of a 2 out of 10 out of stress and test these safer environments. If it's a big decision and the company's riding on it, that's maybe not the time to test that. So you have to work yourself in slowly. But I think leaders have to give themselves permission to act differently, but also have to invite their team to show up into that space because it might be new for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Tyler, I know that you have over 15 years of experience in leadership and leading teams, my friend, and you said that the universal truth is that people's voices they matter, as we've been discussing today, my friend. And I want to know your thoughts on the connection between common experience and common purpose, my friend, because I think there's a powerful linkage between the two, and I'm wondering your thoughts on that very subject, my friend.
Can you unpack that a little bit more, Kevin? I want to make sure I understand your question before I jump in.
In terms of making sure that people can see that their opinions are they matter within the course of an organizational decision making process, because when you sort of ensure that people's voices that are lower on the totem pole are added to the decision making process, I believe that the more inclusive and more accepting decisions are made within the context of an organizational culture. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the connection between a purpose, connection, and really the decision making process, my friend.
I think that's a great way to frame it because we all have our personal biases, we all have our personal agendas. And I think I've read this statistic and I can't remember where it was or even what it was, but you know, people say, "Oh, compensation is the main reason why I stay here," or "Oh, it's my relationships." But often it's the feeling of contribution. Did what I brought to the table actually matter and actually impact? And I think as a leader, it's very important, especially if you are a large purpose-driven organization with a big North Star that's quite shiny and large. I often find that someone lower down the totem pole, sometimes even the leadership team, doesn't necessarily see their contribution to that bigger level. So I think it's very, very important as leaders, as mid level leaders, at every tier of the organization, that you have conversations with your team members to maybe be a little more explorative so they can ask you as many questions as you ask them. What I'm getting at there is they might not understand how the work that they do or the impact or the decisions or the information they provide actually ties back to the bigger image. I've seen this fall apart in all kinds of organizations, small, medium, and large. Oftentimes in large, it's often seen as, well, that's the senior leadership. I'm way down here doing my thing. But if every layer of the organization is inclusive in that way and is willing to engage from a relational perspective to understand not only where you see that person fitting in, but where they see themselves fitting in, oftentimes what they believe is the right decision isn't always what's going to happen with the organization. But if they've had a chance to be more engaged, to actually understand a little bit better the layers in between, I think it makes all the difference in the world when they go home at night and say, wow, okay, I see the company going in this direction. I understand what that direction actually means. And in a perfect world, they see the contribution that they were able to make in connection to that. I don't think there's any other way to get there without more dialogue, more conversations, lots of questioning, but questions that flow both ways. They get to ask you as many questions and feel safe doing it as you ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I just did a quick math equation before you finished answering that, and I discovered that we spend over 2,000 hours a year at work. If you go 40 times 52, that's over 2,080 hours a week at work, my friend.
Yep.
I'm curious to ask you about the role and responsibilities as leaders to help sort of your employees cope with the societal pressures of life, because we spend a lot of time at work, and sometimes we bring things that are happening outside into the world into the walls of an organization. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the responsibility of leaders to help their employees manage the societal pressures of life, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Kevin, that is a big question. I'm glad you're not beating around the bush today with your questions. I think that's a tough one. So I'll give you my personal view, which is my own bias. I think that the world can be a crazy place and the pressures of society are extensive. I believe, and my hope is that I can make my work environment or the culture at my organization a little bit more of a safer place. What I mean by safe is maybe a little less unknowns, maybe a few less variables. Maybe when something happens in the organization, there's a big client win or there's something new happening, I go out of my way as a leader to communicate that openly with the team. Because I think what causes us a lot of stress in out there in the quote unquote real world, it's all the real world, is our sense of lack of control. I don't know what's going on. I watch the news. It's too much. There's too much AI. There's too much global politics. There's too many political leaders doing crazy things. When I go to my organization, wow, my leader takes time. Our leadership team, my manager, my coworkers take time to fill me in on what's going on, allow me to know where I fit into the mix, reduce my stress by letting me know, no, we're actually having a great year and here's where we're headed as an organization and we feel really secure. Or when something crazy happens like tariffs, like COVID, are you taking the time to almost, and I'll argue, over communicate is almost, it's not even, there's no such thing as over communication in an organization. From the top, you allow your team to interact and understand and feel a little less out of control and a little bit more safe. Psychological safety comes in all shapes and sizes, and understanding that when you show up and work, You've got expected outcomes. You've got certain parameters that you can feel comfortable in. You've got teammates that you can confide in. You've got managers that you can ask questions of, and they'll answer your questions. So I think the belief, if I can, is to create a little bit of an ecosystem, a little bit of a bubble inside my organization where we as coworkers, we as teammates, we as leaders can be a lot more deliberate of the environment that we create that's maybe a little less nutty than the world at large.
Yeah, and Tyler, I want to talk to you about your book, which is entitled Curious as Hell, My Friend, Leading and Growing with Curiosity to help leaders, founders, and change makers unlock their sense of resilience, my friend. And I wonder your thoughts on the book, why you decided to write it, and why you want people to read it, my friend.
Kevin, you asked the best questions. This is my favorite podcast so far. I love it. I was so inspired by the journey that I had been on myself. So it was a little bit of a biography, but not really, because it is in the sense that I believe in being vulnerable. I believe in being humble. I believe in showing up and letting people know about the journey you've been through. I didn't always think that way. So earlier in my career, like I said, before I got into podcasting, I did not realize that curiosity was my superpower. I didn't realize that making my audience the hero was the best thing I can do to engage people around me. And as I started to go on this journey, I said, wait a second, I see so many leaders, especially rising leaders. They're in their 30s, early 40s, or older. Age doesn't matter, but it was a mindset. That leadership cohort that's looking for a different way. They said, I've had good leaders in the past. I've had bad leaders. I want to forge my own path. And I said, you know what? I really think curiosity can pay exponential dividends in leadership and in life. I could have wrote it just as a general book, but I really wanted to target at leaders. If you're on your way up in your leadership journey, or you're at a place in your leadership journey where you've got a real diverse cohort of people under you from different generations, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and you're looking at how you can show up, I think curiosity is one of those, is a universal skill that if you create a culture where curiosity thrives, you will get better outcomes. This was my way of giving back while also forcing myself to go on that journey. When you write a book, Kevin, it really forces you to think about your thoughts and to think through how I was deliberate at bringing curiosity into my life, how a 360 feedback from my team turned into wait a second, I am not leaving any space. I'm taking up all the oxygen in the room. I'm not being the leader that I wanted to be. And I really wanted to pass that on in a time where I think curiosity is more important than ever in the leadership realm.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Tyler, I wanted your thoughts on this because our friends over at Human Resources Director Canada, which is a leading publication for senior human resources professionals, they published a report back in 2024 that said that 31% of professionals believe that leading with empathy and a good CEO who knows how to listen gets more of a responsive sort of outcome from their employees that they're in charge of leading, my friend. So I wonder, what are your thoughts on those findings and how important empathy and listening is for CEOs, my friend?
Well, personally, Kevin, I think 31% is too low. So I would like to dig into that stat and find out where that came from. But I think at minimum, it's 30%, if not higher. The leader who doesn't listen is the leader who doesn't learn. And if you're not learning as the leader in today's world, with all the realities of just the onslaught of change that's happening, you're going to develop blind spots. And if the people around you aren't feeling heard, how are they going to feel like they're connected to your organization? And how are they going to provide that level of discretionary efforts required when every battle is an uphill battle? And I think that statistic is very telling, and I think it's very light. And I think it's also a transition of the old top-down command and control style leadership of I have to have all the answers and you will go this way because I say so. I believe that has had its day. I believe it still has pockets, and this is not abdicating the need for decision making as a leader. Sometimes you still have to make that decision. But how well informed were you before you made it? And did the people around you feel like they were consulted? Were they brought along the journey? Even if the decision you ended up making at the end of the day wasn't aligned with what they wanted, did they feel like they were part of it? The leaders that don't do that, I just simply think are, and I think statistically even more so, are not going to get the best out of their people.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, my friend, the 2024 KMGC Outlook report also indicated that a higher percentage of CEOs today are focused on what they call their employee proposition statements and talent retention, my friend. So, how much or how much energy do you think a CEO should place on things like talent retention and really the sort of proposition of their employees and really addressing the needs of them in order to cultivate and elevate an organizational culture? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, the simple truth, Kevin, what's in it for me? Before I show up, how many times as a business have you been asked to go, what's your value proposition? What's your differentiator? What do you do that really stands out? As a business, for me, in my business, or me as a customer, how is that any different for us as individuals? When I show up to work for you, Kevin, I'm going to come. I'm really excited. I'm going to work for Kevin because I believe what I'm going to get some remuneration that fits where I believe I need to be. I'm going to get to contribute to something bigger than myself. Back to your comments about purpose earlier. I'm also going to feel like I can add value every day of my life. When all of a sudden I stop feeling like I'm adding value, then am I getting value? What am I learning a new skill? If I joining this organization, am I learning a whole different set of skills that's going to allow me to advance my career? Do I get to be part of something that actually fills me up that I can go brag to all my friends about? If I don't know what's in it for me as an individual, I think that that's a very short-term situation and I'm going to jump. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to keep moving around until I find that sense. And I don't want to just masquerade this as a sense of purpose. I think that that can mean different things to different people. But if the CEO, the leadership team, if my individual, keep in mind, like we said earlier, if you're a leader, you should be also be a coach. If you're a coach, you should also be a mentor. When I'm mentoring someone, I'm not doing that for what's in it for me. They're coming to me because of something that's in it for them. Imagine in a workplace environment, a culture where everybody knows what they're going to get out of it and why they're there. Ultimately, you're going to get better outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I want to talk to you now about vulnerability and making mistakes as a leader because last year our friends over at Medium did a global survey that said that only 16% of leaders or CEOs felt comfortable admitting that they made a mistake or that they value vulnerability as a superpower within their organization. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the role that vulnerability plays within an organization and how important do you think it is for leaders and CEOs to admit their failures in order to better connect and better be relatable with the people that they're in charge of leading? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Kevin, I think there's a bunch of layers to this one. First, for starters, people make mistakes. Leaders make mistakes. Guess who knows the leader made a mistake when they do? Almost everyone who works with them. So not admitting it is almost an exercise in futility because by not being transparent and actually pretending like everything is fine, I believe you're actually eroding your credibility because everyone around you knows that something went off the rails, knows that so-and-so didn't get back to so-and-so, didn't do something they said they were going to do. I'm a big believer in your say-do ratio. Your say-do ratio has to be incredibly high. And even as a leader, if you say you're going to do something, I think it's actually imperative that you do it. And if you don't, own up to it, even at the smallest level. My business partner years ago said to me, he says, Tyler, it was a comment about vulnerability. He says, I think it's really strange that we wait to have trust to be vulnerable. But the second we're vulnerable, we create trust. And the universal truth of that statement is so powerful as a leader that if you show up with a degree of vulnerability and a degree of being authentic with your team, like, oh, wow, I didn't know the answer there. I don't know the answer to this question. I really want you guys to help me. Hey, I made a mistake or I didn't get back to you in time, just owning up to it, following through. I think that's incredibly important. And there's multiple examples out there in society where an organization as a whole had something go wrong very, very publicly, whether it was a case of food poisoning. I think there's a very famous story in Canada where a large meat producer had a recall, and the CEO went out publicly and admitted to the errors, admitted and owned it right away. And I believe it saved their brand. I believe there's examples on a larger scale where people didn't own up and they didn't take accountability, and it actually destroyed the organization from a brand wise. So I think this starts right at the top and goes all the way from your outward facing brand all the way to whether your leadership team can trust you to be honest, even though they already knew that you didn't know the answer or knew that you'd made a mistake. You owning up to it just puts a fine point in the fact that you're trustworthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I'm curious to ask you about creating great habits as CEOs, and the recipe you think goes into creating relatable habits that your employees can rely on as you as the leader, my friend. So what do you think goes into creating relatable habits as a CEO, my friend?
Well, something I think it all starts with self curiosity, which I touched it on earlier, and something I do and I've done before and I still do whenever I need to check up. I hold myself accountable to how I behave in a way that I can be very transparent about or I can keep very private. I literally take a sheet of paper, I draw a line down the middle, and I put a behavior on one side that maybe I would like to see less of, and I put a behavior on the other side that I want to see more of. And every time I finish a call, especially like this, any kind of a Zoom call or virtual call, you can do it in real life. It just takes a minute when you get back to the office and just write down what happened, what behaviors showed up for you that puts you on the left side, which is maybe the less desirable behavior, and the right side of the more desirable behavior. And if you want to take that one step further, take a few trusted confidants, people that you work with, that you trust and you have a good relationship with them, and let them know what's on your sheet. And ask them after meetings, say, hey, you know what? I've been really working on doing less of this behavior. Maybe it's interrupting. Maybe it's jumping to conclusions. Maybe it's not giving anyone any time to speak. Maybe it's pretending I have all the answers even when everyone knows I don't. Versus the other side, which is maybe be more transparent, be more vulnerable, be more open, to give other people's ideas more time. Ask those people on your team for transparency and for feedback around that. It is amazing how quickly leading by example sets the tone for the rest of your team to start doing similar activities. And just a little bit of sharing and a little bit of transparency. And all of a sudden, being self aware, being self curious starts to become a habit for your organization. And that's where curiosity starts.
Yeah, and Tyler, I used to be the regional ambassador for something called the Discoverability Network for the Ontario Chamber of Commerce here in Windsor. And one of the sayings that we had when I worked for the Chamber is that you would get more done if you're collaborative, my friend. And this 2024 study from our friends at Price Waterhouse Cooper sort of backs up that statement, my friend, because they found that 72% of today's Canadian CEOs values collaboration as a big part of their strategic strategy of connection when it comes to sort of connecting with their employees or the people that they're in charge of leading. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the importance of collaboration and the importance it plays in building a thriving organizational culture. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Personally, Kevin, I think it's a non-negotiable with the size and scope of things that we're trying to accomplish as an organization. You simply can't go as far and climb as high by yourself. It takes a team of people. And I don't mean a team of people with one person telling everyone what to do and everyone else doing it. I mean a collaboration around perspective. We touched on it earlier. How can I see all sides of the elephant if I'm only standing on one side? And every problem that we tackle as an organization, oftentimes, especially at the senior leadership or even at mid-level, is much larger than the individual looking at the front or the back or the side of something. You want to know what everybody's seeing around the circle so that you can come at the problem from all angles. And I think when you're trying to accomplish small things, it's easier to go it alone or to be a top-down leadership style. When you want to go far and you want to go big, I think you absolutely have to go with a team of people that are able to look at the situation from all sides of the elephant, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I know that you and I are fans of podcasts, especially about leadership. I know that you've done over 600 of them as a guest, my friend. And I know for me, when I started this podcast 5 years ago, but I am now up to over 1,100 podcasts. So
Amazing.
it's either a labor of love or insanity. But
It's both, Kevin. It's both.
I'm wondering your thoughts on why it's so important for more CEOs to go on podcasts, my friend, and make them sound relatable. Because I believe that going on podcasts is a tool that more CEOs should utilize. And I'm wondering your thoughts there, my friend.
I think there's twofold. I think one, it's a fantastic platform to get yourself out there with long form conversation. It's not sound bites, it's not quick hits, it's real conversation. And as a leader, I think the more that you practice, and I think being on podcasts is a great opportunity to practice communicating your message efficiently, effectively, and consistently. And for so many leaders that have risen through the ranks of being highly technical experts, oftentimes their ability to communicate their message on a broader stage can be a challenge for them. So I challenge all of the leaders out there to support exactly what you said. Practice getting your message out there. Share what's going on inside your organization. Share your learnings. People want to hear. Let people in, but it is no better platform to really engage in proper dialogue and proper conversation, and to practice improving being an effective communicator, which at the end of the day is table stakes for any top leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, I've got three questions left for you. And the first of those three questions is this, my friend. Based on your decade and a half of leading teams and being in leadership roles, I'm curious to ask you about the top three mistakes that leaders make when they're trying to maximize the potential out of their staff, my friend, and the recipe in trying to fix them, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Oh, wow. Those are powerful. Number one, stop thinking you have to have all the answers. Step two, stop trying to make the people on your team more like you and make them more like them. And start asking more questions of the people around you. They know more than you think.
And to grow on that question, my friend, I also wanted to ask your opinion on growing through uncertainty because, going through life, if we always have the answers to the test of adversity, it makes life no fun to live, right? So I'm wondering your thoughts on the importance of growing through uncertainty and change, my friend, and what are your thoughts there?
Kevin, I think certainty is one of the biggest myths perpetrated on us right now. That there is more certainty than we think, and I want to be really clear. That doesn't mean not moving forward, but I think moving forward through challenges, because everything is a challenge, because you never have all the information until after you do the thing. Mitigating your risk, balancing out the knowns versus the unknowns, creating situations where even when you quote unquote fail, it doesn't destroy it doesn't destroy your resource base. It doesn't destroy your ability to move forward. So I think mitigating your risk, but taking those steps anyways, gathering information constantly as you're going forward, and constantly resisting the opportunity to react before reflecting. Taking those few minutes of reflection and go, okay, what do I know? What don't I know? Is this a make or break? Will this bankrupt the company? If it's not, okay, I'm going to move forward. And I learned something new. I'm going to adjust. I think it's a constant state of readjusting your course. As you gain more information, there's always something you don't know that shows up. I think it's being able to move forward through the balance of those two, but stopping and pausing along the way to, okay, what have I learned now that I didn't know before, which could have been earlier today? Okay, I've learned something new. I'm going to adjust my course and move forward. Never be so locked on the need to be certain that you stop taking note of all the little landmarks that show up along the way.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I've got one final follow up, and then I'll ask you my last question. Sometimes when we go into positions of power, we get stuck in a bubble. I think of politicians or I think of high level CEOs who have created sort of this psychologically safe sort of avenue of success for themselves that they forget about the people on Main Street. So I'm curious on your thoughts on how we can make sure that CEOs don't get get, comfortable in their comfort zone of power and still can escape the bubble of leadership. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
The caveat is be very careful falling in love with your own legend. And I think
Okay.
oftentimes we can get inundated and surround ourselves with people that are very supportive and think the same way we do. I believe you have to force yourself and be very intentional to expose yourself into environments where people think differently than you, act differently than you, believe very differently than you, but doing it very strategically. It's the difference between vacation and travel. I can go on vacation and sit on the beach, or I can go traveling in another country where I have to figure things out. I have to figure out the currency. I have to meet other people in other cultures. I have to eat at restaurants with a language I don't speak. One forces you to learn and come back differently. The other one forces you to come back relaxed. If I put myself into a leadership bubble, as you said, and fall in love with the fact that, oh, I'm always right because I've always been right, that's a very, very dangerous place to be, especially when the world around you is changing with perspectives that you might be losing touch with. So I believe that as a leader, it's our requirement to expose ourselves to environments that force us to maybe not always be drinking our own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, it's important to humanize yourself, isn't it?
Well said. That's very well said.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with legacy, my friend, and how you want your own personal and professional legacy to be defined, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, legacy is not a conversation I think about very often. I think about the impact I'm having in the world that I'm living in the moment I'm having it. Curiosity has allowed me to engage in conversations with people with such diverse backgrounds from so many point of views through podcasting, through my leadership team, through seeing people around me just doing better at the life that they want to be better. And so for the short term, for me, I'm able to see an impact from my work around curiosity and my own openness and my own freedom from not having to have all the answers. So day to day, I get rewarded on that. In the long term, when I think of legacy, I think about it maybe after I'm gone. Maybe I have a bench at a park with just says curiosity on it. That would be a good enough legacy for me.
Absolutely. And Tyler, just because we're both Canadian, my friend, I'm always excited when I talk to Canadians and I ask them, what's the best part about being authentically Canadian, my friend?
Oh wow! Authentically define authentically Canadian. Oh, we have a sense of quiet pride and quiet optimism about our country that maybe doesn't get shouted as loud as it could, or as quite as much bravado as some of our neighbors, maybe in other parts of the world. But when you live here and you get to experience the level of inclusivity, the level of openness, the level of opportunity that comes from how quickly you can build a network of trusted people in your life that actually have your best interest in mind, that is a Canadian superpower that I benefit from and I'm honored to contribute to.
Absolutely, my friend. And finally, tell me if people want to buy the book or get in touch with you personally. What's the best way they can do that?
Oh, check me out, www.tylerchisholm.com. My team and I have put together a website that I'm incredibly proud of. It's got articles on it. It's got links to buy the book. It's got quotes. It's got different points of view on ideas and concepts that I share. There's also some links to a few of the podcasts I've done. So tylerchisholm.com. You can find out everything you want to know about curiosity as a leadership trait, how you listening to today can start to bring some more curiosity into your life and reap the benefits.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, I want to thank you for the leadership role that you've taken in talking about leadership, my friend, and building an organizational culture where everyone can thrive. My friend, your work in this space and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon, my friend.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.